I'm Teresa Carraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. My topic today is the banality of virtue. I will start, as I often do, with a definition of virtue. Virtue is bonding with people who are in the conversation over our shared superiority to people who are not. I will be giving 3 examples of this. Now, I often say that my MO is love the person, challenge the ideas. There is only one idea I ever challenge, which is our superiority to people who are not in the room. And that seems to keep me in constant conflict, and this will be no exception. My first example is an interview that Doc Malik did of Jenna McCarthy. Now, I responded as I was watching. So to put this in context, they started out with impressions, and Jenna did an amazing impression of Kamala, and I responded saying, I adore this woman. She is so fun and so spunky, and she's dressed all in pink with her Make America Healthy Again hat, and this is the day after the election. In the conversation, Ahmed asked, well, if you were on, say, a first date with Trump, at what point, what would be the signs that would make you say, okay, this is not going to work out. He is not who I thought he was. And then Jenna tells a charming story about almost giving up on her husband, future husband that is, because he went into the bathroom, washed his hands, but then left the towel scrunched up on the counter. And she said, oh, he's a slob. I can't do this. And then rethought it. And I think they have several kids at this point. So somewhere else in the episode, she says, I don't know much about Israel and Gaza. And she also says, I think Trump really loves America. And then she does at some point show a necklace, and she says, see how this says be kind? And then she slips it down and she says, but then you extend it and it says be kind of a bitch. And that's what she was claiming. In my comment when I finished watching, I wrote, when Jenna asked if you think Trump loves America, I wanted her to define both love and America. I looked up one of my favorite quotes from Ursula K. Le Guin's The Left Hand of Darkness. The character Estevan says, how does one hate a country or love one? I lack the trick of it. I know people, I know towns, farms, hills, and rivers and rocks. I know how the sun at sunset in autumn falls on the side of a certain plowland in the hills. But what is the sense of giving a boundary to all that? Of giving it a name and ceasing to love where the name ceases to apply? What is love of one's country? Is it hate of one's uncountry? Then it's not a good thing. Is it simply self-love? And when Jenna says, I continued, she doesn't know anything about Israel and Gaza, what she means is that she doesn't care. If she did, she would find out. Nothing stopping her. As far as I could tell, her goal for Trump is to change the food pyramid and put Ripped Bobby in charge. I'm trying to put this kindly, but I am also kind of a bitch about these things. It's like not caring that your husband works for the mafia and tortures the kids of shop owners who don't pay, as long as he folds the towel in the washroom. Another quote from Estevan. A man who doesn't detest a bad government is a fool, and if there were such a thing as a good government on earth, it would be a great joy to serve it. I ended by saying, it's not Trump who's corrupt, it's the whole system, and my plan to change it isn't simplistic and naive, and then I linked my book. Jenna wrote back, I'm so sorry I didn't say what you wanted me to say. Let me fix that. To love one's country is to feel pride, devotion, and loyalty towards it, to want to protect it and see it thrive. to respect its history and its heritage. Your quote sounds very globalist to me, in the way I believe white privilege is racist to the core, and in that I agree with her. Why would anyone infer that patriotism implies hostility or hatred towards other countries? If I say I love my kids fiercely, does that suggest that I unlove all other children? As my daughters would say, that sounds like a you problem. Let's address this. And when Jenna says she doesn't know anything about Israel and Gaza, what she means is that she doesn't care. Smug and condescending much. What do you, Teresa, know about the cholera outbreak in Zambia or insurgent violence in Mauritania? What's stopping you from knowing everything about everything? I am not afraid to admit when I don't know enough about a topic to weigh in confidently and definitively. You should try it. I am also not afraid to concede, as I did a dozen times in this interview, that I can see your side's points. I'm open to the possibility that Trump is a puppet who was only allowed to win this election because they sanctioned it. Are you open to the vague, remote, surely unlikely possibility that you've gotten any of this wrong? Ahmed and I talked about 100 different goals for Trump, but you heard what you wanted to hear so that you could plug your book. Clever. By your estimation, I'm a fool, simplistic and naive. The fool doth think he is wise, but the wise man knows himself to be a fool. Shakespeare. There's one thing we can agree on. You are kind of a bitch. You said it. I just agreed. I replied, I'm sorry, Jenna. I clearly didn't express that well. My motto that I express in posts like Disagreeable Women is to love the person, challenge the ideas. Women are typically good at the first but bad at the second. Men the reverse. And by love, I mean seeing the other person as an equal and looking to understand. I think that speaking truth to power is virtue signaling. It's speaking truth to our friends that's risky. By your be kind of a bitch necklace, I jumped into challenging your ideas and skipped over telling you all the places we agree. When I posted my first note that I adored you based on your Kamala impression, that didn't change by the end of the interview. I love your energy and fire and honesty. I've written much about why I couldn't support Kennedy because of his unwavering support for Israel. Mary McLaughlin asked if I was a single-issue voter. I explained my position that ethics isn't what someone does for us, but what we do to other people. With all three candidates, I am forced to participate in the most unethical and immoral acts humanly possible. What could they offer me that would make me be okay with that? What happens in Zambia or Mauritania isn't something I'm doing by proxy. But Israel wouldn't even exist if it hadn't been for U.S. interference in the Great War, which would have been peaceably settled except for the Balfour Declaration. World War II would never have happened. And none of what Israel is doing now would be possible without U.S. money and weaponry. Israel, or rather the powers behind it, run U.S. policy, not just foreign, but in all the propaganda we call media, the medical hegemony, the global finance system, education, law, and police. Mossad carried out 9/11. They are the deep state. So Ahmed is right to point to another fake assassination by a Palestinian American, and this was Ahmed's theory, where Trump is whisked off to Epstein Island and Vance takes his place. That was my part of the theory. Vance is their man. Trump is the martyr who would get red-blooded Republican men to fight in the Middle East. When you say you love your children, do you say you love America in the same way? Do you mean the same thing by that word? Do you love Democrats in America, just like your children? Do you feel a loyalty to those Democrats that you don't towards Ahmed? because he was born on a different plot of land? Is America, which really should be two continents, not the default for one country that doesn't even have a name, United Statesians? Is it the land, the people, or an ideology? To love an ideology uncritically seems dangerous to me. To me, this isn't a one-time battle between Kamala and Trump. It's a 3,500-year war between empire and sovereignty. I'm hoping it's the last time we fall for a handful of people ruling over us while they goad us into fighting each other. I'm glad Trump won, which I think was inevitable. It means that we're in the last stretch of their plan. Some people critique those who eschew electoral politics as not having an alternative and just giving up. Or they have poorly thought out alternatives that don't hold up to scrutiny. I don't think it's possible to present an alternative to the global economy in a comment box, but it's a question I spent 10 years researching. So yes, if I didn't link my book as an alternative framework, I would be disparaging your solution of Trump without putting myself out there for your critique. You and I agree that things need to change. You are hoping that political change is enough to solve the problems. If you find out that it's not, will you move to another country? I'm saying that's not the only alternative. We can divorce the oligarchs and keep our property, which never belonged to them in the first place. As you go through these 4 years of trying to make the marriage work, I just wanted you to keep that in mind. We're on the same side, and so is everyone else. Next is a conversation that I had on the excellent Decode the World's 25 people you didn't know were linked to the WEF. And I commented on there. I see good and evil as adverbs, not adjectives. They're qualities of actions, not inherent qualities of people. I believe that people are all inherently good, which is the only belief I have that I won't raise to question. If I believed otherwise, I'd believe in my moral superiority, and I refuse that belief. When people behave badly, therefore, flawed systems and stories are to blame. I define good as alleviating suffering and doing better as enabling others to alleviate their own and others' suffering. To do bad is to inflict suffering, but to do evil is to cause others to inflict suffering. Without systems of obedience and the stories that justify them, there couldn't be the mass infliction of suffering there is. Being coerced into committing acts that go against our nature creates a cognitive dissonance that kills the conscience. They can't think about it clearly without believing they're a bad person. On Who's a Member of the WEF, Nimble Navigator wrote, "Here's an easy way to remember. Anyone in power is a member of that club. See? Easy peasy." I answered, I still require facts, logic, money traced, quotes, before I dismiss anyone as a fraud just because I've heard of them, even if you're right 99% of the time. Nimble replied, "Many pretend to start out small, rags to riches. Most are children of the dark ones that have the power in this realm. If not, they pay a huge price to join the club. If one is aware of that price, it's horrific." I replied, I suspect even the children of the dark ones pay a horrific price. I describe these as pedo-sadist cults that make their own children complicit in acts done to other children, to bind them through blackmail and shame. Maybe they have hidden fathers who were in this club. Maybe they sold their souls for fame. In either case, they deserve more pity than scorn. By acknowledging what goes on in these cults without blaming the victims, we can end their power. And here I link mine on pedo-sadist cults and Annika Lucas, and also Hollywood and pedo-sadist cults. Nimble wrote, I would agree with you on having compassion for those who've made choices for fame, power, and money, as ultimately they will pay the personal price of having lost sovereignty over their own souls. I don't understand how that would end their power, but it sure puts our own personal power back into our hands instead of playing victim to the powerful. I answered, we were talking about children born into powerful families. Can a child give up its soul? And how do you know what happened to those who became the puppets of these cults, used by them to send subliminal messages to the public? Did they know what they were getting into, or were they drugged, roofied, set up with children groomed to be sexual, put into macabre rituals while under the influence of psychedelics? Your hypothesis rests on your moral superiority to others, that you would never have made the choices they did. The only way that's possible is if you were born morally superior and would have carried that with you no matter whose life circumstances you were dropped into. That's what the concept of a soul is. Superiority that follows you from body to body. I don't believe in that. Nimble wrote, "You're projecting, Teresa. You have no idea who I am, and you're showing yourself with your judgments. You're looking into a mirror and seeing yourself, then having the moral superiority to judge others. Take a rest, go within, and tend to your own traumas, dear." I answered, "You're taking my comment personally, but I don't mean it that way. When you say they will pay the personal price of having lost sovereignty over their own souls, you're saying others are so immoral they no longer have a soul. Is there a different way you mean that? And unless you believe that you also have lost sovereignty over your soul, you're making a statement of moral superiority. Please explain if I'm wrong." I'm not saying that's unique to you. It's the whole basis of Christianity, free will and the soul. What I'm saying is that moral superiority is illogical. It's something I've argued in many episodes on why, if we're born morally equal, our behavior in our life is because of our circumstances. We all tend towards the good and want to do good, in my opinion. I'm not judging you. I'm explaining why I don't think you or any of us can judge others. Nimble answered, "You're spot on about judging others. We don't know their circumstances or what traumas they faced in their lives. I just have a belief, not based on any evidence other than resonation in my heart, that some people have sold their souls to attain fame and fortune. The children are innocents, yet we cannot judge that as truth either. What have they brought with them into this life, this realm? What experiences did they want? We can't even begin to make pronouncements or judgments about anything. Even the right and wrong proclamations are judgment. So I don't feel morally superior to anyone. I had a choice to sell my soul for notoriety, and I chose not to. Just a personal choice. Those that do so for their own reasons. It's a huge price to pay. I'll venture to make that statement. I don't know if I've answered your questions or if I've gone off on a separate path of discussion. I'll leave that to you to decide." I answered. Kathleen Devaney quoted her mother on a thread about this topic, saying, "If we knew everything people had been through, we could never judge them. And since we'll never know everything, why not skip right to forgiveness?" You state, based on the resonance in your heart, that other people have sold their souls as a belief, not based on evidence. My only dogma or belief that I don't raise to evidence is that I'm no better than anyone else. You may not feel morally superior to anyone else, but your belief on which you base all other perceptions is that you are. It would be contradictory to say other people have sold their souls, possibly before they were born. And you could have, but you chose not to, but that doesn't make you morally superior. Of course you believe it does. It's the basis of your belief system. I'm not criticizing your belief in your own moral superiority. I'm merely acknowledging it based on your own statements. If you didn't sell your soul for notoriety because the price was too high for the value of what you would have gained, that's a business calculation, not a moral decision. You don't know what the price was for others, both for refusing or accepting the deal. You don't know what you would have done in their shoes. All you have is a belief, which I define as making up your mind in advance of the evidence. And Nimble concluded, I'm going to have to end this conversation, Teresa. You seem to be fixated on the term morally superior, and truly, I don't know what the fuck you're carrying on about. You and I live in two different dimensions, it seems, and therefore cannot communicate properly. I don't care that you continually judge me. That's specifically about you. That's called projection. You judge and you project. It's quite clear. What you think about me makes not a lick of difference to me. I just feel for you. There's a mental imbalance going on, and I hope you get it squared away, my friend. Godspeed. And I answered, Thanks, Nimble. It's a useful example you provided that I've copied into my stack for the future. It's always hard to show the underlying belief system without people thinking I'm judging them for judging other people. But I think you've made my point quite nicely. The last example is that yesterday I went to my favorite nail salon, and it was strangely deserted. The guy a couple seats down said, I'm glad to see someone else who didn't get scared off by that horrible post on Nextdoor. So after talking with the owner and getting more details, I reactivated my Nextdoor account so that I could find out what this was. Dan Marshall posted, I feel obligated to let everyone know what I heard about Mission Nails on Mission Street. A former employee informed me that the lady who owns Mission Nails does not wash the towels after she treats our hands and feet. She sits them out on the back of the building to dry and then reuses them a couple of times before she washes them. She also told me one of the customers got a foot infection. This is very inappropriate, and he didn't mean her talking like this. So I investigated myself, he says, and drove around back, and sure enough, all the towels were out there drying. And he attaches a photo of a half dozen of them. I personally do not go there anymore. Just want to let everyone know what's going on the West Side. Here are some of the responses. Report this. And then I counted 15 that said the same thing. Sacramento Board of Cosmetology will ticket them with a big fine and possibly shut them down. Inexcusable. That place should be shut down. Pukey face. Dan, it's your responsibility to follow through. If you don't follow through, it's like dropping the ball, and someone who doesn't see this might end up injured, all because you decided to drop the ball. 30-year cosmetologist here, super gross and scary. She can get shut down for this. Disgusting. I used to own a salon. So gross. The rest of the place is disgusting also. Tons of dust, cobwebs, nail trimmings on the floor. I would not let my dog use the bathroom. And this was a guy who posted that. Won't be going back there again for my petties. 3 pukey faces. Then 6 pukey faces. Other recommendations for nail salons, and I counted 14. I use them, but never will again. I had COVID a year ago last August and had a very strong feeling that is where I got it. Thanks for the information. And someone sane replied to that. They all wear masks, and how would you know you got it there? Is that the only exposure you had? Sheltered life. Someone wrote, so thrashy. If they can't afford a cleaning service, then they shut down. Oh my God, these comments are like villagers with pitchforks, another sane person. Some of you all need to check yourself, my goodness. But someone replied to them, you remember the place in Watsonville where all those people got MRSA? Mission Nails needs to be reported to the health department. Ick! That's disgusting. Pukey face. So unsanitary. They probably don't disinfect properly either. Disgusting. Definitely needs to be reported and people to stop going there. Someone needs to call the state board, and then there are numbers posted for that, and there's at least 12 people who say that. Someone says, you should. The more people that do that, the more it will get dealt with faster. Everyone in the comments is saying someone needs to do something instead of actually doing something. Yuck, pukey face. You are much appreciated for letting this unacceptable practice continue by speaking up. Hopefully they'll catch word of it and make some changes. You might even take it a step further and inform the proper agency inspectors so they can give them a visit. Oh, hell no, not paying for faunchy foot fungi. Gross, rancid and decrepit, disease-ridden. Gross and unsanitary to say the least, pukey faces. Wow, how said. We'll never go there again. Thanks for the heads up. Ew, oh, that's nasty. Dan, the original poster, then wrote, I'm done with it. I just wanted to let everyone know. Feel free to report it to the city. I just didn't want to go through all the hassle. I don't even know who to contact, and anybody can inform them. So you can if you feel like it. Just keeping all of us West Siders informed. I posted replies to many of these. I have been on a rampage. But this is what I posted to the group. My daughter Veronica, who is over the top on her cleaning fanaticism, got me started going to Mission Nails 5 years ago. I am not a manicure kind of person. I don't like the third world servant vibe. But the owner is a person of so much integrity and compassion. I've been hooked. Besides being an absolute perfectionist, don't go if you're in a hurry, she treats all her workers like family. I know all about her son in the military and her daughter studying medicine. My daughter has a real bond with her and she always asks about her. The salon has fresh towels, sanitized tools, and not a speck of dirt that I've seen, and my daughter sees everything. Today, when I went there, it was practically empty. Dan has felt obligated to ruin this woman's business based on a comment by an ex-employee who left to start her own salon. I'm certain it's the same one who bent my ear for my whole manicure, complaining about her ex and why she needed more money. She guilted me into a big tip, but I was so relieved she wasn't there the next time. However, she has great English, and that makes her credible to Dan, who didn't care enough about the community's health to report it. If this was false, that would have been no harm. But it certainly wouldn't have smeared the competition for the ex-employee. So Dan did the noble thing and destroyed their reputation without ever bothering his petty little head about reporting it. Now, there's no way they can ever clear their name. If they're inspected now and pass, Dan can just say they were forewarned. I don't know how he sleeps at night, casually crushing the livelihoods of innocent people to impress his new manicurist. And my final comment on that thread. Let's look at what Dan's post and the reactions to it reveal. People are grossed out by the idea that a towel that dried someone else's feet might touch their feet. This evokes outrage in them because who knows what kind of people with their horrible feet go in there. And people do have horrible feet. I won't mention genders, but it's not women. Why is it considered just fine that these Vietnamese are spending their days laboring over people's horrible feet, doing a job we would never do, when the idea of a towel coming into contact with our precious feet grosses us out? Again, I'm not saying that they ever reuse towels. That is BS made up by a disgruntled ex-employee and posted irresponsibly by Dan. But the reaction of all the people who are okay with humans being subjected on the daily to something that horrifies them as a possibility of secondhand contact says a lot. I'm sure their ancestors said the same about how they just don't make slaves like they used to. Where do I go from there? This is the question of evil, and this is Logic is Your Friend. Thank you for letting me rant.